The next one we're going to attack here is data. This is so big. Opportunities are so huge when it comes to data, and there are so many facets of data when it comes to the mobile world that I don't even know really where to begin, because this is such a rich emerging market that all of a sudden it's upon us. Because all of a sudden there are 5 billion connected devices that we carry in our pockets around the world wherever we go, and they're all collecting data. And somebody must have just woken up one day and just said, "Oh my God, we have so much data, we can make a ton of money." And then they started moving down this path. And data is, I think, the holy grail for mobile revenue, isn't it, man? It's just huge.
It is huge. It's I mean the biggest thing about data to remember, I think, well, not the biggest thing, a big thing to remember is, remember your grade, I don't know, 11 chemistry teacher or something taught you when you did an experiment, you have to have a purpose, and then the methods, and then the data, which you gather, and then you make a conclusion, right? And so if you are collecting data, all that stuff you learned in grade, 11 or 12 chemistry or physics still makes sense. You can't just collect a whole bunch of data and hope that you're gonna have a great conclusion and make money, right? You really have to be smart about, why am I collecting it? What am I going to do with the data? The amazing thing about it is, in experimental terms, the N is so large. My sample size is huge. So there's the big opening for opportunity.
There's never been a time like this where you can actually reach as you said, the sample size, a huge subset of a population, not only in one local area, not only in one country, but multiple countries, and be able to sample this across, just because they carry these devices. That is one of the aspects that I am so interested in. The other side of it is this emerging market of wearable technology, because you think that we're collecting enough data right now, or too much data from the phone that we have in our pocket. But my goodness, these things, always on, connected devices, whether it's strapped to your wrist, you're wearing it as eyeglasses, or you're wearing it as a shirt, or even a baby's onesie, the data is flowing through, and there are massive opportunities in order to be able to crunch it. But to your point, you got to know what what you're collecting and why you're collecting it, or else it's just a pile of numbers.
Yeah, and in user experience, the thing that's always been true is, it's about understanding and insight of your users or customers. And data can help you get, information about understanding and insight of your customers and what they're doing, but you just have to be smart about it when you're doing it.
So why don't we break this down? Because it is so big, and we've already bitten off probably too much that we can chew in a short period of time. But if we were to look at the enterprise, right, large companies and how they could use it inside, and then we'll bring up some examples about how the large enterprises or small enterprises can leverage data from their customers to better serve their customers. Is that a good way to do this?
Sure. So it's a really simple, we've worked with clients on HR apps, for instance, right? And an HR app should be helping your human resources, not in a punitive way, but in, hey, let's actually help these guys. Simple things to track are, what information are people asking for all the time, right? And then if you're designing it, how do you put that information at the top? Or, now here's the bigger thing, right? How do I change my system so actually, why is everyone asking how vacation pay works or something like that? Oh, apparently we don't explain it very well, right? So you can learn things that help throughout the entire system. Businesses, there's only a few ways to make money. One of them is operational efficiency, right? And you can gather data on how people operate and what they're asking and where they get stuck and that sort of things. That allows you to become more efficient. And it's not about the people, it's about setting up the system to serve the people rather than the other way around. So that's a great internal use that we've seen. And honestly, I think we're just glimpsing that.
Yeah, we definitely haven't started. It's funny how people think about the enterprise and they automatically think to punitive things like, Jack Welch, we're going to fire the bottom 15% because we track you on your phone and we know you're not in the office. And I don't think that that's what we're talking about here. At least
No.
we're not quite there yet. But there are things that are almost immediate that you can leverage data from. Like, that if it's 11 o'clock and you're a salesperson, it's 11 o'clock, and you're at an airport on a Tuesday, then anything that you're buying with your credit card is going to be an expense, obviously, for your business, right? And the same thing around mileage. If you're driving on a Tuesday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you are a salesperson based on the role that you're doing, there are ways to make that intuitive internally so that everything gets processed faster, that there's less overhead or headaches for your employees, right? Those things are, I think, low-hanging fruit, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's all about we've talked about, we used the word context so many times, right? And you're observing the context of the person and you're responding to it. And you're saying, because I know you're behaving this way. I mean, that's what data is. It's saying this is how you're behaving, or at least we're inferring you're behaving a certain way, right? We know you go to this one page all the time, so we think we can infer what's going on. One thing that sometimes you might want to follow up on is actually talking to a few people to see if they're actually behaving that way. You gave a great example. We were talking the other day about bump, right? And I think it was bump that they cut out a bunch of features,
yes,
right, in a release, right, when they went from 2.0 to 3.0 or whatever it was, and it was very brave. What they did was they actually looked at what people are using and not using, and I'm sure they did an excellent job. But when you're doing that in general, you also want to double check, because if they're not using it just because you designed it badly, that's a different reason than not using it because it's not of value. But data can give you the insight, at least, that, hey, this feature isn't being used. Maybe we got to redesign it, or maybe it's just not that valuable.
Yeah, with Bump, it was a perfect example. Is that they started off. Bump is one of the top 10 apps of all time in iOS, and it is quite literally you bring two phones together, and it's the bumping motion and the movement motion that transfers your contact information, your business cards, and that's what they set out to do. And they went version 2 and beyond, went so far off the rails. They decided to do so many different things, and then they realized that 90% of the use of the product was the original use. 90%. So on version 3, they stripped out all the stuff that wasn't being used, and they went back to the original mantra. They just made it much better, and it was all because of user data. So there has to be some other examples, a few other examples about how enterprises, big companies, are using this, what we call big data, to actually make a little bit more money or help us as consumers move along the buy decision a little bit more. Do you have any other ones out there, Scott?
Well, I mean, some of it's a bit speculative because by their nature, these guys will, of course, hide a bit of
deny, hide, right?
With their data, right? One thing that was known even before this, of course, is airline companies were smart about tracking where people flew and things like that. And then they would offer you, a package. If you're always going to the West Coast and you're always going to, Vegas and San Francisco, then why not offer this guy a package? Now, that was even before, we're carrying around smartphones and these little data trackers, whether we're wearing them or carrying them. So now I know your location and what you're doing, and I know that you're going to board San Francisco, flight because you just got a ticket. What else do I know about you? And you can start to combine this stuff. So you can start to see even something as simple as location data, combining it with other existing data, how you can start to leverage this information to push opportunities to people.
The airport is such a perfect example of this. Is that you've got there's an entire battle happening now with airport merchants. The stores that you scream by as you're late for your flight.
Yeah.
But they are trying to, it's their business to attract your business into their doors. So now you add that layer on top of this, right? So couponing and discounts based on destination and time abroad, and then you bring in the duty-free shops, and you've got this ecosystem all around data that is a little bit smarter, right? So it says you've only been in the US or you've only been in Canada for 48 hours. You're only allowed this one bottle, and it does all that. And then marketing happens as a result of that knowledge, and it's all data-driven, right? I mean, that's an awesome future. Frightening a little bit about how much data is being exchanged, but it is an awesome future. We've all used. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you said the frightening part. I can't remember the movie. There's a Tom Cruise movie where he's walking by billboards and they're talking to him because they recognize who he is, who his character is, and they give something very specific to him that they're suggesting. And I mean, we're getting a glimpse of that because basically the data is about, we kind of know who you are and what you're doing and what you like. So we're going to target something very specific to you. And that's really what data is about, whether it's helpful, which hopefully most of the time it is, or whether it's, people argue it's sometimes a bit underhanded. But.
Well, it's underhanded. I mean, we see this online in the web world with retargeting of ads based on your history of where you've been. So if you've ever been to a website and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
you notice all of the banner ads are from that
Yeah.
website,
Yeah.
it's to keep them in your view
Yeah.
much longer. But if you were at, like, say, the Pokemon website for your kids,
Yeah.
and then you're seeing Pokemon, it doesn't do you any good anymore because that's not an interest. So the problem with mobile is that there's no such thing as the mobile cookie yet. So data.
Yeah.
The thread of data is important only if you can share, right?
Yeah.
And if you can't, it's in isolation, and then you don't get the Tom Cruise walking through the airport.
Yeah.
But one of the things that and a great experience is, from a consumer standpoint, is the app Waze, right? It was just bought by Google recently for a lot of money, and it's a it's a GPS. But what they do, they have this little bit of intelligence, like if you ski every Sunday, which we do. It understands that at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, when I launch Waze, I'm going skiing. So it automatically puts up the information, right? It puts up the route and the directions, my preferential direction. I don't have to choose anything.
Yeah.
It just does it. And then you start to think about the data that's layered on top of that. The ski hill knows that I'm coming. There's restaurants along the path, and then that kind of data changes the experience from one of the ski hill's the destination to there's opportunity along the way for detours. And I think that this is a fascinating time just because of data.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're actually working with the company. I have to be careful what we say, but it's really
It's okay. Nobody's listening. Go ahead.
It's really about leveraging. That's leveraging your behavior, right? Yeah. And it's looking at applications you're using in a generic sense and leveraging your behavior and making some suggestions, right? In a way, in a way, it's a suggestion to you that's really good, right? My suggestion is you probably would like to have the route, right? Well, yes, 99% of the time that's right because this is what I do. And that's what data is. Data is insight into your behavior and preferences. So how do I behave? What might I want? Which is all good user experience research actually is about that, right? What are people's preferences? What are their actual behaviors?
And I think that's the key thing is that there has to be a value, or else it does become creepy, like creepy.
Yeah.
The opportunity is, and one of the biggest ways to leverage data is. We've talked about a little bit about the wearables and the ability to put on a shirt that has sensors that give you the metrics for your body, right? I mean, this is a self-tracking generation that is happening, and we know that that's going to emerge, and trends are going to be there, and there's always that hope that because I'm wearing a shirt that has sensors in it and it's tied to my iPhone or my smartphone, it will be it'll let me know when I'm on the fringe of having a heart attack, right? So
yes. Yeah.
And it'll call 911 for me right away, and then the hospital, the ambulance will be here before I have my heart attack, and we're not quite there, but there is opportunity. When it comes to doing a certain amount of research when it comes to how people are using product, and I think that's really where the benefit is right now, which is, look, you want to re-engage your customer base, you want to re-engage your app users. You have to leverage the data that you're collecting to be able to really specifically target the things that are important to them, to be able to bring them back into the fold. That is the key to revenue, is to make them come back many, many, many times. And I think that is the perfect first use of data. Find out what people are using, how they're using it, how they want to use it, and then start to implement those things in your mobile application, in your mobile world.
Absolutely. And I like it's nice to think there's the creepy stuff that potentially, but it's nice to think about the altruistic things too, like the medical ones. How can you use data to help someone who has been in the hospital and is coming out and they're on a fitness routine or a certain diet? How can you help them with learning what to do better, tracking, whether it's their calories they're burning or their pulse or their blood sugar level or what. So there are many good uses of data that potentially connects, for instance, a patient with their doctor. And in the end, this could be a business proposition too. If I'm building that software, right, and I'm allowing the patient and doctor to connect without the patient driving all the way to see the doctor, then all of a sudden I've got a way that'll save the hospital and medical community money because people are getting less sick. It's preventative. The cost is less. So there's altruistic societal benefits that can come from this data. It's not just about selling you something.
I really, really, really wholeheartedly believe in that. And if you've ever looked at the way that healthcare is done right now, when you ask a question, it should be a simple question like, how long will this pain, how long will I be in this kind of pain when I did this, like broken arm or something like that, or they don't really know. But if they took the aggregate of all the data and they put a sensor in everybody's, cast, they would be able to leverage that data to some good use, and you'd be able to get an answer, right? You'd be able to know how your bone is healing and the humidity and the pressure in there. Like, there's so much that can be done. The challenge with data is that people are fearful about giving up too much data, and what that data is, obviously, as we've seen many times over in the last couple of years, what that data is being used against you, or for good or for bad. Like the talk of insurance companies limiting or increasing your rates because you smoke or you drink, right? So there's a balance here with big data. And to your point at the very beginning, you have to know what to collect and why you're collecting it. Data spoils, and if you ever get caught by accident with too much data, you've had a breach in your network, somebody's hacked you, and that data comes out that you've been collecting it, that is more detrimental than anything you can imagine when it comes to your business longevity. So it's caution.
Yeah, and there are huge ethical issues around data, and I mean, I'm not wise enough to solve those, but I certainly know that they're things people need to be aware of, and I think we're all obligated to be thinking of.
Yeah, and inherently we know what those are. It's the thing that you hope that never happens with your data, right?
Yeah.
And that's the boundary that you have.
Yeah.
But all that to say, when you look at this, we are in the very early stages of this massive opportunity, which is data, and using data to better your customer experience, better your product experience, better your internal processes and simplify them if you're in a business. And also, hey, you know what? Trigger new revenue opportunities as a result of this data. Find the trends in the data, but you have to be very clear about what you're looking for and why you're looking for it. Data is awesome.
It is.